Rusty, welcome back to another episode of Archers of Horror. On this podcast, we watch every horror release from Arrow Video. And this week, our film is Donnie Darko. And before I go any further, I should say that this is a guest episode, except that our guest, Sabrina Ellis of the bands A Giant Dog and Sweet Spirit, she's just not here yet. So we had no choice but to start recording.
Well, we both hit up social media and made an announcement that we were having guests. So
yeah, we can't back away from the guest thing. And she, her band played in Dallas last night and is driving to St. Louis now and should be there at some point. And
it's crunch time.
You know, Rusty, it's funny because I remember when I first met Sabrina. Can I tell you the story of that?
Yeah, because I don't think I actually know that story.
Well, my company was hired to do a music video for her band, A Giant Dog, by Merge Records. And we went down to Austin to shoot the video. And the first day of shooting, we were shooting some live footage of her band. And for whatever reason, that night, I plummeted into an extreme depression. And I was just like, what the fuck am I doing here? What am I doing with my life? You know, it's like a punk show, so it's like crowded, people bumping into you. And I'm just like, people bumping into me. I hate this. And I wasn't the director, but I was the editor and the producer. So I was just like, nothing's coming together and I have to edit this. What is this video even going to be? This is for their song Jisney, by the way. And they got up on stage at like midnight. They're the headlining band. They're really big in Austin. And so they're all set up, ready to play. And Sabrina is not on the stage yet. And I was like, where the fuck is the singer of this band? I kept looking at my phone and I was like, it's 12:20 in the morning. I was like, I'm going to be alone for the rest of my life. This is so depressing. It's really hot. And oh, here she comes. And then I saw Sabrina and I was like, oh, she's instantly pretty charismatic. And then she's like getting on stage and I'm like, she seems like she might be funny. And then she starts performing and I was like, oh my God, she is amazing. And I was totally won over. And the rest of that weekend, which was basically 2 years ago today, that shoot, I should say, was one of my best memories. And me and Sabrina have become very close since then. And excited to welcome her to as a guest on the show at some point tonight.
Now, your attitude wasn't very punk that you were annoyed by people bumping into you. What happened to you?
I don't know. Well, you know, just also we were shooting, so I'm like moving around with like the camera and like, you know, my God, sweaty people.
How many people were looking into the camera during the shoot?
Oh, that's a good question. Actually, if you watch the video, there's a lot of people who like look at the camera and there's like a guy who like waves and stuff like that. And through the magic of editing, I make you think that those were people who were involved in our video. In fact, they were just looking at the camera or waving at the camera and not reacting to the character as the editing would leave you to believe.
Did you ever see 3 O'Clock High?
You and me, we're going to have a fight today after school. 3 o'clock in the parking lot. You try and run, I'm going to track you down. You go to a teacher, it's only going to get worse. You sneak home, I'm going to be under your bed. You and me. 3 o'clock.
It's a great movie. At the end, though, after the fight scene, there's like a crane shot where the camera's pulling out, and there's one person that just so blatantly staring at the camera, and it really throws off the shot. When you were an extra in Spider-Man, were you looking into the camera?
You know, this is wild that you bring this up because Spider-Man was, I just watched that scene randomly. It was like on some YouTube video and did not see myself.
Oh, really? Wait, so you can't see yourself in any of the shots you're in?
I don't think so. I'm trying to finance a IMAX re-release so I can really search for myself, but I don't think so.
For those who are wondering, which shots are you in? I know the wrestling one.
Yeah, the wrestling one, and then the one where Green Goblin attacks, like wherever that is. I don't know if it's Times Square or just like some kind of city area, but everyone just starts running around.
Is that listed in your IMDb credits?
It isn't, but I have thought about adding it. The funny thing is, I remember when they were shooting the Green Goblin attacking, they were like, oh, okay, now on this last take, like the crowd, everyone just go as crazy as you can. And everyone just starts running around like crazy. And like these guys trying to flip the police car and people just going nuts. And then they're like, cut, not that crazy. Now, Rusty, Donnie Darko, we're edging our way back towards traditional horror.
Yeah.
Bit of a fan revolt about the Last American Virgin. So do you want to explain that?
I know.
You said you were going to issue an apology.
Well, I'm not going to let that happen again. I did have Porky's lined up for a future episode, but that's been canned.
And Donnie Darko, we know it's not a traditional horror film, but we're edging our way back in. Our next movie is going to be Martyrs. Rusty, what's your history with the film Donnie Darko?
You know, I have to admit that I've never seen it before 2 days ago.
That is shocking.
Did you see it and not remember it, or were you also like me? Well, I deliberately avoided it.
Yeah, I had a different experience, but you go on, and then I'll jump in.
I mean, it came out in a time when movies were pretty bad. Like, I would say 2001 was a pretty rough period for film.
I would say it was a rougher time for America, you selfish prick.
Oh, wait, you broke up. What was it?
I would say it was a rougher time for America, you selfish prick.
But the way when they finally released Donnie Darko, it appealed to an audience that I was not a fan of. Like it was advertised in like places like Hot Topic, which didn't appeal to me. So I avoided it, and I wasn't a Jake Gyllenhaal fan at all at that time, which I've grown to love him as an actor.
What had he done before this?
Didn't Bubble Boy come out around the same time?
Oh, yeah. I remember you didn't like that movie. You said it hit a little too close to home.
I wasn't planning on cutting the bato. No.
I mean, I think the turning point was what, like Zodiac or maybe Brokeback Mountain?
Oh, yeah. Both of those. And he's just done great work. You know,
yeah.
What a great actor. What a legend.
Definitely agree. But yeah, I mean, I feel like you're in agreement with me about when Donnie Darko first came out, the cult following that it had.
Let me tell you the life lessons I learned watching this film. I watched this movie twice yesterday, and I had not seen it in years because when it first came out, like you, I resented any kind of like, you know, thing that seemed trendy and seemed like lame people would think they were cool by being into. Like, do you remember the Ultimate Band List?
Sounds familiar.
It was something on the internet when the internet barely existed, and you could go to this website and you could like click on, you know, whatever band, and they had a lot of like, you know, punk bands and bands that you were kind of surprised to see them on there. And I remember one time looking up pretty like, you know, still very basic punk, but like whatever it was.
Hit me with it. Which one? Which band?
I mean, probably Dead Kennedys and whatever other kind of things we're into at that point. But this kid saw what I was doing and was like, "What are you looking up? You guys think Nirvana is so cool? You probably just got Nirvana. You're Nirvana posers." And I was like, "Nirvana? This guy who likes Nine Inch Nails is like accusing me of being into Nirvana? I'm looking up like punk bands that are cool." And that was the kind of guy that I imagined being into Donnie Darko. So I resisted it. But then when I watched the movie yesterday, the first time I watched it, I liked it. And I was like, oh, this is cool. And then the second time I watched it, I was like, I actually really like this. And there was all these like little nuances in the scenes that I picked up on the second time. And, you know, it taught me to just not really care about what that kid who liked Nine Inch Nails, what kind of movie he would be into.
Yeah, I think enough time has passed where all those people that were into at one point have moved on to lamer things, probably.
Rusty, you must love the soundtrack for this.
Oh, it's phenomenal. And it works really well with the scenes that they use the music in.
You know, when I was telling my Sabrina origin story, I should also say that I've directed 4 and now going to be 5 music videos for her bands. And so I love music videos. And just the way that the music works in this movie, like that head over heels montage, is so good.
It's funny because like, and I believe you watched the special feature, the Deus Ex Machina.
The philosophy of Donnie Darko. Yeah, that was. I was glad that it was when I first thought it was called the philosophy of Donnie Darko. It was an hour and a half long. I was like, what the fuck is this crap going to be? But it was really just your standard kind of like behind the scenes Arrow documentary, and I loved it.
Yeah, me too. And pretty much the director said that he was the only one in favor of that scene with Head Over Heels, and because it played like a music video and didn't really fit. But I love that.
Me too.
I love the introduction of the characters. You got a really good sense of what was going on.
It introduces like every character in the movie, and also when you watch it again, you're like, oh, you see all the kind of like all the kind of things that will unfold. All the seeds are planted in this montage.
Yeah, I didn't really. I miss because I watched it twice as well, and I like miss Seth Rogen in that scene, and also Jenna Malone. Mm-hmm. And you really do see every character that pretty much interacts with Donnie throughout the film.
Don't want to correct you on something, but it's actually Seth Rogen. That's right, people. He had to reference balding at some point and just get that out of the way. You know what's funny, Rusty? I was coming home the other day from a haircut on Monday.
Oh, that's a waste of money for you.
Yep. And I'm coming back and I get a phone call from Taylor, Washington, who claims to listen to this show. I told him that I just had a haircut that was harrowing because of my whole balding situation. And he says, balding? This is the first I've heard you mention it. So now I think, well, he must not be listening to this show very carefully.
It's the ongoing theme of the show.
I think we've got a poser walks among us.
Yeah, for sure. But as long as that listen count is going up, I don't mind.
That's true. That's true. Also, I should say, please rate and review the show.
I like how you threw that in there.
You know, I noticed that even when I say it, no one does it. But I end up coming across people in life, like at a business dinner the other night, and the guy's like, "Oh, you have a podcast?" And I'm like, "Give me your phone. Give me your phone."
Didn't you forget to rate the show?
Well, the funny thing is, I once looked at the ratings, and as has been mentioned before, we have 19 one-star reviews as a result of a personal incident that had nothing to do with this show. And I saw there was like a 3-star review, and I was like, okay, I get the 1-star review because they were sent by an enemy of the program, but 3 stars, who the fuck would give it 3 stars? And then I looked, and I was like, oh shit, I gave it 3 stars.
I mean, there was a few rough episodes, but still.
Back to Donnie Darko now. Yeah. Rusty, Donnie Darko, what a cast, huh?
Yeah, ridiculously good cast. I don't know how he pulled that off for his first feature, although I think it's attributed to Drew Barrymore.
Yeah, she definitely played a huge role.
Although I didn't love, she was my least favorite character in the film.
Her character is very strange.
Yeah.
Watching those scenes, I couldn't quite get a beat on like what she was really doing. However, when she has Jenna Malone's character come in and sit next to the cutest boy,
that seemed a bit unprofessional.
Well, no, I'm now developing a dating app around that, so really excited. Now, this movie has had so much written about it, so much vlogs about it. I consumed none of that data, so I might just find myself repeating, the conventional wisdom.
I didn't really do any of that either. And I'm curious about the director's cut, because apparently how many minutes is it? 45 or 50 minutes, something like that?
It is definitely longer, and it features a reference to Watership Down, which I was like, oh, that was cool.
A terrible thing is coming.
What do you mean?
The field. It's covered with blood.
Yeah, there's a lot more in there. It seems like it erases a lot of the ambiguity of the film.
I didn't really think I didn't. Now maybe this is a controversial thing to say, but I didn't really think there's any ambiguity in the film.
It's a pretty dense film. There's a lot. I mean, it takes a couple viewings to really put pieces together.
I mean, isn't it just? I hate to quote Jason Mantzoukas, but isn't it just a Jacob's ladder scenario? And he didn't want to die alone, so that's why he kind of imagines the whole Jenna Malone's character dying at the end thing. And he briefly like goes through like a time portal when he first meets Frank, and then he returns to the time he came from after, and then he dies. Wasn't that the whole thing?
I think you're missing the part where he goes to recall and he gets the implant, and then he has a schizoid embolism and is stuck there.
Guy's a fucking asshole.
Not true. It's one of my best friends.
You know, Rusty, a movie that this film, for all that has been written about it, it has never been compared to this, but I think it's a very valid comparison. Do you know what movie I was reminded of while watching this film?
Matrix?
The Mutilator. Now, you're probably saying how you think it's a joke, but because after Donnie Darko's character like didn't get hit by the jet engine in the first, in the first bit of the movie, all the daytime scenes have that same kind of gauzy, dreamlike look that they have in The Mutilator when the kid accidentally shoots his mom and goes, "Mama."
Mama. Buddy Cooper, I hope he's listening. I hope he hears this.
The Mutilator is still our most popular episode.
That was a great movie. I've said this before, but I've grown to really love that movie. Funny because I looked up an article briefly before we started recording, and they have a completely different explanation than what you just provided. And basically, they talk about a tangent universe.
Bullshit.
And there's a lot of ideas thrown out there, different terms. There's the artifact, which is the jet engine, and then there's a thing about the manipulated living, and the living receiver, and the manipulated dead, and the insurance trap. Which
Mark, you're drunk. You're talking gobbledygook and balderdash.
You refuse to believe it. I like what I've read. It makes sense. It adds another dimension to the film, but there's some holes in it, and the way they try to explain those holes, it just kind of like, well, that's just the way it is. Like, there's no reason. And basically, like, the jet engine being an artifact, and when he, at the end of the film, when it's used again and kills Donnie, it's just like, well, it doesn't disturb the universe this time. It's just like, but why not? And I don't know if anybody's interested in that. I don't know how well I could elaborate on that. And I'm not trying to say that it's my own theory, so I'm not trying to sound smart or anything here, but it was interesting, a good read. But I'll probably interject some of that throughout this episode.
Rusty, I'm going to tell you about, I don't have a ton of notes for this episode because I figured Sabrina was going to be here. So I was really just going to let her lead the way.
Me too.
You want to know one of my favorite scenes? Just in general, the movie, like the second time I watched the movie, I found it much funnier. And in general, I think the movie's pretty funny. But I love when the little kids are talking and they're like,
Beth's mom said the boys' locker room was flooded and they found feces everywhere. What are feces? Baby mice. Aww.
That was your favorite scene, though?
That is one of my favorite scenes. Another favorite scene is when Jenna Malone and Jake Gyllenhaal are on a walk. It's like her first like real intro to him, and he's like oh, your dad is emotionally disturbed, like so am I. Like, what's his deal? And it's just a great scene because you could just see her going back and forth between thinking like, is this guy too weird? Is he charmingly weird?
He's so good as that character.
He really is. Like,
to think of anybody else playing that character, and I think there were some other choices before him, like Jason Schwartzman.
It so easily could have been Jason Schwartzman. He left just because of a scheduling conflict, I think.
And I don't think he could have pulled it off the way Jake did.
It would have been a whole different movie.
Yeah.
But in that scene, you could just see her reaction. Like, there's so much nuance in the performance. Like, every actor in this movie is really good. And so much nuance in their performances. Like, you could see her like going back and forth where she's like, this guy is kind of a freak. And then he's like talking like, oh, he's like, I try to put all of my pain into like my art. And she's like, oh, this guy's like, he's cool. And then he's like, oh, maybe a writer or an artist. And she's like, oh, like she could see she's into him. And then he's like, maybe I'll just be both. I'll write the book and draw the pictures. And then her face is kind of like, something wrong with this guy. Yeah. She eventually says to him like, oh, you're weird. It's a compliment. It's like, oh, that was her whole tension during that scene. Great work.
And then he just very weirdly asks her out, but it's like in such a bizarre way. Like, was that what he was asking?
Yeah. Because he was like, do you want to go? And she's like, go where? And he's like, oh, that's how we say it.
Yeah. And she agrees, and then she's like walking towards her house, and he's like, oh, where are you going? And she's like,
I'm going home.
and then he like beats himself up about it. Like, why did I ask that? That was so stupid.
So good. There's so many little, like, you know, the scene where they're talking about what he said in class to the teacher, like the teacher who's kind of like the conservative, like horrible lady.
Oh yeah, farmer.
Yeah, and they're like if you looked at the dialogue of that scene where it's like, oh, what did you write on the card? And then she's like, he says, stick it out my ass. Mm-hmm. Like that would just be whatever. But the way it's shot, it makes it all into a joke because you don't know she's there until like the camera like pans over to her, and it's just like, you know, what a good mix of fucking the tools of cinema. I don't know, but it's funny. It's a funny movie. What am I going to say?
I mean, I really have to give it to Richard Kelly and Stephen Poster, because for our first outing, he did a fantastic job directing this film.
He really did.
Oh, not Stephen Poster. He's got quite the resume, but
yeah,
Richard Kelly. He didn't really have much success afterwards, did he?
No, actually, it's a sad story. He went crazy, and Josh Trank was recruited to go upriver and find him and kill him, and then he went crazy too. Do you want me to explain that joke to you? Because Richard Kelly and Josh Trank both had breakthrough debuts in movies that featured like sci-fi elements, and then they both kind of like crashed hard. And in this example, the film Apocalypse Now has become okay. So
what happened here,
Rusty? When you saw,
are you finished? Wait. Was that thought finished? Did you finish that thought?
Yeah. Well, did you hear the part about Apocalypse Now? It's supposed to be that Richard Kelly is the Marlon Brando character in Apocalypse Now, and Josh Trank was the Martin Sheen character.
Oh, okay. I got it now. Man, that was a stretch of a joke, though. How many people would have gotten that joke?
Josh Trank would have if he was. If someone could go get him out of North Vietnam. Someone throw me a life raft. Hey, Rusty, when you saw that. Hey, when you saw that future thing, that future, like, what do you call those things? Like the abyss kind of thing? You know what I'm talking about? The thing that shows you where you're going?
Yeah.
When you saw that coming...
Yeah. Well, it was inspired by the abyss as well.
Yeah. When you saw that coming out of your chest, was it going to eBay to buy vintage toys?
Oh, definitely. And I followed it. I knew what I had to do. Well, where did yours take you to?
It took me to that Apocalypse Now joke, and I thought it was leading me to the promised land. But instead it's destroyed this podcast. Please rate us 5 stars on the iTunes store.
I like that. You know what? I know this sounds very trite, but I really liked Frank the Bunny's voice. I found that really relaxing. If there was a book on tape read in that voice, I would immediately buy it. I don't care what the content is.
Wake up, Donnie.
You know what scene I liked?
What?
Well, I was talking about how it's trite that I liked Frank the Bunny. Did you like Frank? Did you like the actor James Duvall that played him?
Oh, who would not like that guy? In the documentary, he was just like the most likable guy.
He was so fun. You know what's funny? He was like this, having a great time. He's cracking up at everything he's saying.
We've seen his type of archetype. We've seen his archetype quite a bit in this journey, because there's often someone in like the behind the scenes documentary who's just like so stoked to have been there, so happy just to have been part of it, and is just like so happy that they're being interviewed.
Oh yeah, but, you know, he was a hot commodity for a brief period.
Really, I had no awareness of him.
He did some indie films that like people were very into. Like, remember Doom Generation? Everybody was into that.
Yeah.
And he was like the mod in SLC Punk, which had a bit of an underground following. And then, I mean, he's still doing a shit ton of films, but I don't think any of them are getting, you know, big releases. And I like, you should hire this guy. You should work with him. Seems like
I'm doing it.
All right.
Well, that brings me to my next thing. If Sabrina were here,
any minute now. Any minute now.
I've been having, as a result of watching this film, I've been having weird coincidences springing up all over the place.
Perhaps you have to fix the universe.
Me and Sabrina's next video involves a Ronald Reagan mask. It's the exact Ronald Reagan mask, I believe, as when the person's jumping on the trampoline.
Really?
Then, right
Is
after I
that
watched that,
Point Break, or
no,
is it different? It's different.
It's a different one. Then, right after I watched that, I had a YouTube video on, and the guy mentions Ronald Reagan masks. That's not all, Rusty. You might recall this movie mentions Ed McMahon. Late Friday night,
You dug up his corpse.
I couldn't think of what to watch.
Don't tell me you watched Star Search.
No, I ended up watching Gaga 5'2", the documentary about Lady Gaga, and there's a part where she walks into her grandmother's. I think it's like a hotel room she's staying in, or apartment or something. Doesn't seem like her grandma has permanent residence. That part's not important. But she walks in and she's like, "It's Ed McMahon," but the grandma also looks like Ed McMahon. So I was like, is she calling her grandmother Ed McMahon, or is she coming in the door like Ed McMahon used to with the Publishers Clearinghouse? Either way, it seemed like an abrasive thing to say to someone's grandmother. I wouldn't know this because my grandmother died in like 1930.
I don't know why I'm laughing at that. I already forgot now. How did you get to Lady Gaga and Ed McMahon? Oh, because your coincidences.
You know what's probably happening right now in an alternate universe? Sabrina's probably a guest on the show.
You got to get these universes to align. We got to get Sabrina here.
Yeah.
Did you know? I didn't see this, and maybe it's in the director's cut, but there's a lot of references to rabbits throughout the film. I know you mentioned the Watership Down, but there's other rabbits at different times.
Mm-hmm.
There's just like a stuffed animal rabbit, and then there's like a rabbit next to like the keys when he walks home. I didn't see any of these references. Do you plan on watching the director's cut?
I actually probably will at some point.
I think the director's cut explains more of what I was saying about the tangent universe, because I think if there's actually some pages from the philosophy of time travel that you could look at and explains some of those theories. But yeah, so you don't buy that though. You don't buy the tangent universe.
I mean, I don't even know what it is.
Basically, every once in a while, a tangent universe gets corrupted and starts to merge, I guess, with the present universe, or it takes over the present universe. And I'm going to butcher this because it's kind of complicated, but there's a living receiver that's designated that has to kind of repair it. In this case, Donnie Darko is that person. And unbeknownst to him, he doesn't know he's the living receiver, but the manipulated dead, which is Frank the Rabbit and Gretchen, Jenna Malone's character, have to kind of guide him into doing certain things. So he's guided in everything he does in the movie, every sequence you see, all those choices are made for a specific reason in order to get him to the end of the movie where he corrects the tangent universe from forming a black hole and puts it back into alignment and restores the present universe. It's pretty complicated. I don't know how much I butchered that.
Well,
that's like the gist of it.
There's still something that doesn't make sense, though.
Oh, there's a lot of things that don't make sense, but go on.
I mean, how was Samantha made the leader of Sparkle Motion when she's late on all the moves and she's the worst dancer? She's the worst dancer of the group.
Well, that is why she's in the tangent universe. We all know Ashley Tisdale should have been the lead in that, even though she wasn't even in Sparkle Motion.
Love that Sparkle Motion, though. I love dance.
In order to remind me of, and I was saying to Jen this morning we were talking about the movie, and I was saying how did you ever watch Star Search? I always hated it, but did you ever watch it?
I always hated it, but I watched it because it reminded me of I had nostalgia for being 5 when I was 6, and I was like, it reminds me of being little, watching it on Saturday evenings.
Yeah, right before bedtime.
Yeah, and I always hated it though.
You know what I hated though about it, even as that time, like the comics that were on it were horrible because they had to work so clean. And even though I was 6, I wanted a little bit, even if I didn't understand it.
When you were 6, you wanted a little edge.
No, but it was on in 88, so we were 10. But yeah, Star Search 88 is what's in the film. But you know what I hated about it? The judges were always so generous with every act. The winning act would get the 4 stars, but the act that was complete shit would get 3.5. And it's just, come on, they didn't deserve 3.5. They were complete garbage.
Wow.
You don't remember this?
Nah, I don't remember that. But in today's world, see, it's weird because in today's world, if you gave something 3.5 stars, that's like throwing feces in someone's face.
Now, what's feces again? Explain it to the audience. So Donnie Darko.
Oh shit!
yeah, we're talking about Donnie Darko. Who knew that the license to use chud was so difficult to get?
That was a wild part of the film. When they go to see The Evil Dead, that was originally supposed to be chud, and it's a bit like the guy accusing me of being into Nirvana when he was into Nine Inch Nails, and I was looking at punk shit. It's like chud is kind of a cool movie in theory, but Evil Dead is so much more cool in every way. And it was a great story that Sam Raimi let them use it for free, and then was driving past the Arrow Theater where I've seen Miracle Mile with Steve DeJarnette in person at that very theater.
You went to that theater?
Oh, I've been to that theater a lot. It's in Santa Monica.
Does it still look like that?
Yeah, it looks exactly like that.
I have to say, with like the cobwebs and like seeing like Halloween and Frightmare and Evil Dead and what was the other one? Last Temptation of Christ.
Mm-hmm. I
love the look of that. Like that is, for being in California, it's so reminiscent of fall. Yeah, and especially East Coast. It definitely they really did a good job transforming California into the East Coast, because I did not know.
They did. It reminds me of the Arrow Theater and the Egyptian Theater are like they're the same company. And until I saw Halloween on the big screen at the Egyptian in like the year 2001, I never realized it was shot in LA. Like, I always had such nostalgia for the East Coast when I would watch Halloween. And then when you see it on a big screen, you see the palm trees. I was like, holy shit.
Did you know that the bully did a great job too? Mm-hmm. Like that guy seemed like such a dick. And he's the lead singer of that band Phantom Planet, if you remember them.
I do. I listen to that song California all the time.
And Jason Schwartzman was the drummer in that band. Yep. So there's a connection. But that guy, man, didn't you just hate that guy?
Yeah, definitely. He had the right kind of bully feel. He really felt like a bully.
Yeah. Did it take you back? Did it take you back to high school?
Yeah, I felt bad though, dude, because thinking about all the kids I used to bully. I
have to say though, this movie really holds up. And I know I said I was slamming 2001 before with films. A lot of those films don't hold up at all, and this one really does. The look.
What are some other releases from 2001?
I looked it up yesterday. I mean, obviously the big one is Lord of the Rings, which some people will probably
still holds up, still good.
Artificial Intelligence sucks.
Still holds up, still good.
Along Came a Spider sucks.
Still good.
Still good. American Pie 2.
Well, American Wedding's better, but keep going.
The Animal with Rob Schneider.
No comment.
A Beautiful Mind, which I think you had a poster of, maybe. Throw that out
I
there.
never had a poster of A Beautiful Mind, but my cousin is in it as like an extra in the background.
Oh, really?
But a visible extra.
Blow, which I don't really enjoy.
Never seen it, lived it.
I don't know how many more you want me to name. I'm just
keep going.
This is a complete garbage movie that you tried to cram down my throat. The Deep End.
That is a good movie with Tilda Swinton.
Dr. Dolittle 2, a personal favorite of yours. From Hell, which is garbage. Hannibal. I don't know. Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone, which I guess people like. That's okay. Not the greatest one. In the Bedroom, another garbage film you tried to cram down my throat.
Sissy Spacek is a friend, and that is an incredible film.
No, I love Sissy Spacek, but that's not a good movie. And whatever else.
No, I like it. Keep going. Never stop.
Pearl Harbor, another one that you saw in theaters. Planet of the Apes.
I cried. I had to do it out of respect for our service people, and Tim Burton's Planet of the Apes was the best one of the bunch.
What about Rat Race with your favorite Mr. Bean and John Cleese?
You know what's crazy is that a video that I directed with one of Sabrina's bands in it, at one point the wardrobe person, we were driving listening to the song, which I found out via you, actually via Jen, identified this classic song for me in the Hall of the Mountain King.
Oh, yeah.
And anyway, we were listening to it while driving across this Texas road that was in the middle of nowhere. And it was like a dirt road. It was starting to get crazy. And the road was getting crazier as the song was getting crazier. And it was really funny. And then the wardrobe person goes, "This is just like in the movie Rat Race." And I was like, I can't believe someone's referencing the film Rat Race.
You mentioned wardrobe. Speaking of wardrobes, did you in the featurette, the wardrobe designer mentioned that she repurposed Glenn Close's Big Chill outfit and gave it to the mother, which I thought was interesting.
That was cool.
And also, which we haven't mentioned yet, but Patrick Swayze wore all his old 80s clothing.
Yeah, that was cool.
I have to say, I really liked Patrick Swayze in this movie, and I find it pretty interesting that he would take on that role as a pedophile. And it always reminds me of, remember Happiness?
Oh, of course.
And the dad in that is the child molester. And I feel like that guy's career, like, how do you rebound from that?
Wasn't that Dylan Baker?
I think you're right. I will look that up quickly. But he has gone on to do a lot of other things.
Yeah, he was great in The Americans, which you're making steady progress on that. It's been, I remember I told you to start watching it last episode, and you've watched the pilot.
We've been watching these movies, and plus I've gotten other Arrow films.
Okay.
Anyways, what did you think of the Jim Cunningham character? Obviously reprehensible, but the portrayal of like an infomercial like guru of like self-help and self-improvement.
Well done. Everything in this film is well done.
Yeah, I like the music that they created for the infomercials.
Mm-hmm.
It's very fitting.
It is
very Tony Robbins-esque.
It sounds like when I've done corporate videos for like this medical company. That's like the background music that I use.
I like how the kid told about the 10-year-old wetting his bed. That was pretty funny.
I like when the kid's like, "I'm not afraid anymore." And it stays on his face for just like one extra frame than it should. And it just like totally undermines it. So many things like that where, especially Jake Gyllenhaal, like at the end of scenes, he'll just do like one last thing that just makes it that much better.
Oh, I know. Yeah, he's got such range too when he's like under hypnosis. And he's like doing that voice, and he's like going through the characters or the people that he would like to fuck and how he thinks about fucking. She's like, "But what about tell me about your family?" He's just like, "I wouldn't want to fuck my family." And he does that so well.
I didn't recognize the therapist at first until watching the documentary.
I did not either.
And they were like, "Oh, and you know, we were surprised to get her." And I was like, "Get her." I was like, "Who is that?" And then Catherine Ross, who was so big in the late 60s and early 70s that when you see movies with her, you're just like,
Butch Cassidy and Graduate.
You're just like, where did she go? You know, Stepford Wives, right?
Yeah, it's funny that in that feature she also said like she was she retired at that point? I guess she was retired and focusing on raising her family.
Mm-hmm.
But she was like very enthusiastic to do the film, and they were trying to like win her over. And it was like they both were very interested in and working with each other. I thought that was cool. The character Grandma Death. Here's where I'm a little confused. What do you think happened to her that she's so crazy that she's like the town lunatic? And then I have a follow up for you.
I think she saw the film Hellgate. When in doubt, I tie this to the podcast. That's how you build a brand.
There's a theory in the material that I read. The theory is for Grandma Death is that since in most cases the living receiver, which is Donnie Darko, dies when they restore the universe, the tangent universe, and saves the present universe. And in her case, because there's multiple living receivers throughout history, and she is a living receiver that survives, but it kind of fucked her up. Every town has like a legendary fixture that is known for doing something crazy. Who do you remember or do you have one in mind, a Grandma Death growing up in Seaford, New York?
Well, interesting coincidence that you mentioned this now, because I just saw there was a Parkinson's commercial.
They appear out of nowhere. My secret visitors. Appearing next to me in plain sight.
It was about how you can see visions of people when you're I keep trying to say on Parkinson's. When you have Parkinson's, one of the
taking the Parkinson's.
It can manifest itself as like very realistic hallucinations of just like seeing weird people looking at you. And I remember at the twins' house, there was this old lady who would come by, and she would talk about how the little people, like she'd open up her cabinets, and there'd be like little people, and they'd like scatter, and sometimes they'd watch her, and she'd just see from like. She'd be sitting in her recliner and look in the kitchen, and she could see like an open cabinet, and there was just like a little person, like the Littles, that cartoon, looking at her. And then she died eventually, and we were all so freaked out because like right before she died, she was like, "The little people are coming to get me. They're coming." But maybe that was just her disease getting worse.
There was the Indian in the cupboard that she was freaked out by. That's definitely a scary syndrome to have. That little people are coming to get you. Maybe she saw the gate too many times, and when the clay character fell and turned into all those little goblins.
You know, I recently rewatched The Gate, and I was like, "Holy shit!" Like these effects don't like a lot of places they look like pretty old fashioned kind of stop motion, but in other places I was like, "How do they do this?" And then I was looking at behind the scenes of The Gate, and it was just one of those things where it's someone in a costume and they've got like giant things.
Yeah. I used to love that movie as a kid.
Me too.
It scared me, but I always watched it, and I knew like the parts that I would be scared at, and I was still scared.
It scared me, but I wanted to live it. I was like, this Friday, I want this to happen to me. But was there a grandma death in your neighborhood?
Yeah. We had this weird guy, and the legend was that he had a bad LSD trip, and he was nicknamed the Kicker.
The Kicker.
And he would walk around and just kick everything, but he didn't talk to anybody. Like, so if he walked past a stop sign, he would kick the stop sign, or if he walked past a tree, he would kick the tree.
Oh,
and then he did a lot of spitting.
This could be like M. Night Shyamalan's Signs. It's like the alien lands, and it's like someone's got to kick him, and then he kicks him in the shin, and the alien is like, "Oh!" and he somehow stops the invasion.
Finally lost your mind.
I've just received a text from Sabrina, our guest on this episode of Archers of Horror.
Big update.
She's still on her way. She's about an hour away. And if you figure, okay, she's an hour away from St. Louis. She's going to have to get in, get settled, set up the stuff. Probably going to lose you for this portion. I know you've got work tomorrow. You said you got a busy day tomorrow, but I've got big things planned tomorrow myself.
What's your big plans?
I've got to go see Grave of the Fireflies at LA Live movie theater. Anyway, I bought the tickets like a month ago, and I was like, I bet I'm going to regret buying these random tickets.
Oh.
And now I have like a million things to do tomorrow.
I think Jen and I are 50-50 on like when we buy tickets for a concert or something. It's just like, well, how much was the tickets? It's like $30. We could pass on that. But there's always like that hope when I'm buying those tickets. I'm just like, oh, I'm so excited for this. Can't wait to go. And then it's just like, do I really want to see this the night of?
Well, as I told you, I just bought tickets for an event on 9/11 in 2019 in Sheffield, England. David Mitchell and Rob Brydon comedy show.
You'll be there.
I will. I'll find unless I have like some super serious plans or there's like a war, I will find my way to Sheffield, England, I believe home of Pulp, to see David Mitchell, who I'm the biggest fan of.
You really are.
Yeah, I really am.
You need to get his autograph.
You know,
I don't know why.
I normally
I'm not an autograph person.
I'm not an autograph person either, but I'm such a fan that I would be into that.
Or at least like a picture of you and him together. You could frame and put on your wall somewhere.
I would do that.
You could behead him and just put his head in a glass box somewhere and display it in your apartment.
I mean, that would be taking it a little far. And you know how it is in the collecting game. Once I had his head, I would need Robert Webb's head. I would need Super Hands' head. I can't believe I don't know that guy's name. The guy who plays Super Hands.
I don't either. He's in Skins as well. He was in.
He's in a lot of stuff. He's like a famous guy whose name I should know. But yeah.
What about Dobby? I don't know her name.
Issy Suddy.
And what about Big Suze?
Big Suze. She recently broke her back in a car accident, but here has made a full recovery.
Yeah. It's funny. She was in a U.S. show that she did a American accent. It was very interesting to see, knowing that she was Big Suze.
Do you know that she married someone in the royal family? And the joke about her on Peep Show is always that she was like so posh and stuff. And
wow.
Look at that.
Like, my mum's related to a Hawks, more about 1 million times removed.
God, she's so posh that I, Mark Corrigan, who was privately educated until Dad's British Aerospace shares went kaput, could be her bit of rough.
There's a lot of references to Stephen King. Like the mom's reading It at the beginning. And the dad was reading a book, but they took the cover off so you can't actually see the title. But what was it? The Tommyknockers, I think?
Oh, interesting. I have no idea. You know how I always like to get into like the random bad thing? Like, you know, like most kids were like, oh, I'm really into like Mario Brothers, which is like what I should have been into because that was the best game. But I would always choose like a random Nintendo game to be like, oh no, my game is this.
Defender of the Crown.
Tommyknockers, I did love that. Tommyknockers was my Stephen King book, which is horrible because it's like considered to be everyone's like worst. Everyone thinks it's the worst one. But
I always hated that, getting into like the random thing just so you had something of your own, but it was like you knew it was garbage.
Yeah, and then you kind of just torture yourself and be like, but I am into this. I still kind of do that.
I was very possessive of Child's Play 3, the novel. That was like mine.
That was your big interest. Child's Play 3, the novel.
According to the theory that I was reading, unbeknownst to Donnie, though, he was gifted with some superhero powers, which is hence the line where she's just like, Donnie Darko, that's like a superhero name. And he's like, you know, who's to say I'm not? But he did develop some superhero powers, and one of them was superhuman strength, which gave him the ability to put that axe into the water main and then into the statue. Do you buy that?
Okay.
His other powers, though, he had the power of telekinesis, which allowed him to rip the jet engine off the plane to restore the present universe. He also has the power of fire, but it didn't seem like he just used some gasoline and a match to burn, the Jim Cunningham's character's house down.
Yeah, I think I have that same power.
And he uses water. He has the power of water to create the portal.
This guy is like a battle beast, but he's got it all.
What beats him?
I don't know.
I can't believe how much battle beasts are worth now, by the way. It's throwing that in there.
Really?
Yeah, I had so many of them, and I didn't keep any of them. Some of them go for like $100 for one little battle beast.
Fire! Water puts out fire!
Did you get the impression that Frank, when he was normal Frank, as a teenager, he was dating Donnie's sister?
Oh, really?
Yeah, because in the opening scene, when you see his Trans Am like driving down the street, he was leaving the house, and you hear his horn honk. It's like supposedly when he honks the horn after he drops off Maggie Gyllenhaal, that's him dropping him off because it's the same car horn. I didn't pick that up. I saw the Trans Am in the beginning, but I didn't pick up that he was the one dating Donnie's sister. But he also wrote the message inside the house, said like Frank was here, went out to get beer. Didn't Donnie? I already mentioned Frank's voice, that it was very soothing, but didn't it sound exactly like Kylo Ren's voice in Force Awakens?
Yeah, and he looks like Adam Driver too.
That is true. Or Adam Driver looks like him.
I can make this one sound like Adam Driver. You ready?
Yeah.
Oh.
That's not bad. Did you know that the character of Jim Cunningham was originally offered to David, or I don't think it was offered, but David Hasselhoff read for it. Imagine that with David Hasselhoff. I have a fun fact for you about David Hasselhoff.
Go on.
Do you know that he was in the Guinness Book of World Records twice for 2 achievements?
Really?
The first achievement, not so impressive. He was the world's most watched man on television.
Okay.
Because Baywatch was watched by over 1 billion viewers in 140 countries.
Wow.
But the other one, which is such a weird thing to be in the Guinness Book of World Records for being like a celebrity, was that he achieved the highest height of a human when catapulted using a reverse bungee system. He was thrown nearly 230 feet at London's Battle Battersea Power Station.
I'm confused. He achieved the what?
The highest height a human was catapulted using a reverse bungee system.
Oh, okay. So
he was bungeed backward.
Okay, so the highest height a human has achieved via a reverse bungee system, not via any it wasn't like he was standing on Mount Everest and then did a bungee from there.
He was launched upwards. Reversed.
Okay, well, I'm gonna beat him. It's my life's work. I'm doing this.
231 feet is all you need. Did you know, David Hasselhoff, there's a scientist named Crab after him? You know, watching Donnie Darko, jumping right back to the film. You know what I mean, it's the first time I've seen the film the other day, but I knew of it. And I was just like, oh shit, I forgot that this is where it originated from. But at the end, when they play the slowed down version of Mad World, the cover version.
Oh, yeah.
I was just like, oh shit, I forgot that this song became huge. Like it became a number one by like Christmas time. And speaking of covers, are you a huge fan of the Weezer cover of Toto's Africa?
No.
If you're going to do a cover, don't mix it up a little bit. I'm just jumping around here, but his two friends are like pseudo friends.
Mm-hmm.
I like them in a weird way. What was their name? Ronald and Sean, I think.
It's just there's so many scenes that end with like a good funny line where like the friend is like, oh, this is good shit, and the other one's like, it's a fucking cigarette.
Yeah, but or when like they're looking at Grandma Death and she's like, they're like commentating on her actions. So she's like, oh, she's going back to the mailbox again, and they're like, oh, what's in it this time? And then there's like nothing, and then you're just like, somebody better write her. But the way they deliver it is pretty funny. But I like that whole scene where they're talking about the Smurfs. Seems very like a high school conversation.
Oh, yeah. It's very much like a Quentin Tarantino high school version.
But they made a good point about it. Is that true, though? I don't know much of Smurf history, but was Smurfette created by Gargamel? Or was he theorized? Oh, really? To infiltrate, but she was overcome by their happiness and kindness.
Your desperate hands are turning white. You're hanging upside down, so high above the ground.
Wait, I just want to see if her last text meant she was like in place and waiting, or if I misread that.
That would be remarkable if that's true. You don't have the same conversation with her now, basically?
Yeah, from the beginning. Well, but I think instead of saying, Rusty, welcome to Archers of Horror, I'm going to say, Sabrina, welcome to Archers of Horror.
It's just now starting?
Rusty's long gone. It's like 2 a.m. his time. I changed the lighting in my room. Everything's purple now. And this is a whole new vibe.
So you're going to just start it right there where you said, welcome to the podcast.
No, I'll start it right here. Hey, Sabrina.
Hi, Ed.
Welcome to the podcast. How was your drive?
So
wow.
I feel like you're probably wearing striped pajama pants right now.
I am wearing striped pajama pants, and I mentioned it earlier in the episode.
I feel like I should be able to see you, but I can't. I just see these recording waves, and your voice waves are huge, and mine are tiny.
Yeah, that's true.
Wait, we should explain what a moon rock is, and that I just had one.
What is a moon rock?
It's a ritualistic gift from one person to another, and it's a joint that's rolled in hash oil and then rolled in keef. So it's basically like eating a donut that's covered in frosted flakes or fruity pebbles. Yeah, I'm almost wary of being recorded right now, of what I'm saying. I'm very wary because that's how high I got.
Man, oh man. Did you watch the film Donnie Darko?
So I started out by plugging it into the auxiliary cable that hooks up to like the speakers in the van.
Mm-hmm.
And and then therefore everybody would have to listen to the movie while I was the only one like watching it.
In fairness, one of the better movies to do that with, but still funny.
It was a terrifying soundscape to just like be barreling through the darkness in the van with like the noise of Donnie Darko going on.
Do you like the movie?
I sound really stoned, I have to admit.
I think it fits the vibe of the film.
I don't know. Is it a film about schizophrenia or is it a film about time travel?
I don't know. We were talking about that. I felt like it was just kind of like a classic Jacob's Ladder scenario where he dies and then like the moment before death is him imagining this whole kind of imaginary scenario and then he really does die. But Rusty researched a lot of Donnie Darko theories and was talking about parallel universes and stuff like that.
Yeah.
What's your take on the film?
I didn't think about it as a Jacob's Ladder situation at all, and in fact, that kind of bums me out. That's like I just wasted another 2 hours of my life again.
I mean, yeah.
But I hope I get to see a really, really confusing movie like right before I die in just a few seconds, and everyone's like, "Oh, what's that really peaceful look on her face?" But it's really just me seeing all the things that I ever wanted to have happen, and thinking them, and then I die.
That is when the world will end.
So you asked me to leave the room and come back.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm on Andy's computer. And I left the room that I'm in, and I walked past the room that Andy's in. And I looked at Andy and I said, "It's amazing that the computer can tell if I've left the room or not."
When really I meant to leave the podcasting software room.
And then it took me a minute to realize you meant the digital room. Okay, here's my Drew Barrymore in Donnie Darko.
Okay.
Sit next to the boy that you think is the cutest.
Whoa, that was good.
That's a bit heavy-handed, right? As a teacher to say to someone.
We were saying that her character was really weird, and everything in the movie is weird, but she comes off like I don't really know what to make of her.
She's kind of a bitch.
Yeah.
I like it.
She was just so like she's weird, but I wasn't even sure what her weirdness what it was.
Yeah, there's that one little scene where it's hardly even a scene. It just suddenly shows her and the professor that she's dating in the teacher's lounge, and they're giggling, and she's like, "Donnie Darko," and he's like, "Donnie Darko," and then they laugh. Do you remember that part?
Vaguely.
It's tiny. I thought that was a weird kind of almost like a fantasy, almost like projection, like delusional kind of paranoia, his idea of how people react to him.
Yeah, totally. Did you love when the little kids were like, it was flooded and all this feces came out, and it's like,
what are feces? She's like, baby mice. Oh,
yeah, I love that.
Should we do it again? But
yes.
We should pick characters. Okay, you can be the girl, and I'll be the other girl.
Okay. Oh, and the boys' locker room toy flooded, and all this feces came out.
What are feces?
Baby mice.
Oh.
We nailed it.
Except the baby mice part, she's more subtle. Like she knows exactly what they are. She's like, baby mice. You were doing it like really excited about baby mice, but she's just like, oh yeah, I know. It's baby mice.
Oh, yeah, that's true. I fucked up.
No, I'm just giving you a little note. Can you take a little note?
I can, actually. I can. Do you know that we met 2 years ago today?
That's pretty weird that you scheduled our podcast
the anniversary of us meeting. Sometimes I doubt your commitment to sparkle motion.
Ooh, that was good. Did you think it was weird that Samantha Darko seemed like the weaker of the dancers, yet she was put in the lead?
I didn't notice that, but it's probably because she's an actor, and then the other dancers were probably just cast because they were dancers, like they didn't have any speaking parts.
So true.
But she had all the attitude, all the flavor.
Dude, I loved her. I was like, I wish I had a daughter. Why am I so alone?
So, was it a real short story, or was it made up for the sake of the movie, The Destructors?
Oh, that's a good question. I don't know. Because I know in the director's cut, there's a scene where they talk about Watership Down.
Which is real.
Yeah, that's based on a true story. Have you ever heard of a rabbit screaming?
Have I ever heard the sound of a rabbit screaming?
Yeah, like the other day I was watching a YouTube show and they were like, oh, you guys on the coast don't hear rabbits screaming, but we are familiar with that sound. It's like a horrible sound, and rabbits only do it when they're like about to die. And I was like, is that really true? And then I looked it up, and according to Wikipedia, rabbits only scream when it's never a false alarm. It's always when things are really horrible. And there's YouTube videos of rabbits screaming, and it really sounds like a person. It's a very horrible sound. Actually, during the Waco siege, like the FBI played rabbits screaming to like torture the people inside. And this film involves rabbits.
That's fucked up that they played rabbits screaming.
Yeah, exactly. That's like, if you have to play that, you're probably in the wrong.
Yeah. And how did they get that audio of rabbits screaming,
That's true.
What does the FBI have going on?
Yeah, they're like, one of the FBI bosses is like, it's like, hey, do you still know that really fucking weird guy that records those horrible animal sounds? And he's like, oh, do you want me to call him? I guess okay, I'll call him. He's a weird guy, but I will call him for this.
But what I do have are a very particular set of skills.
Well, what is it sound? Can you do the scream, the rabbit scream?
I just shredded my vocal cords. Luckily, this is my last podcast for a week.
I could picture your eyes just bugging out and your ears just like flattening when you did that scream.
That's the look, and I'm wearing my pajamas and a winter hat because there was a mix-up with the AC.
Really?
Yeah, well, I'm not putting that in, but it was. I meant to turn it off a while ago, and I forgot, and then I came downstairs, and it was like snowing down here.
That sounds magical.
What was your who are your favorite characters in this film?
I like Roberta Sparrow.
Oh, that's a dark horse pick.
I like her story.
I was gonna say, Rusty was saying, why was she as messed up as she was? Did I think? And I said, I didn't really have a theory.
Oh, that's a good question to ask. I mean, she was living in this tangential universe, right? Waiting for it to be destroyed, being the one with the knowledge that it needed to be destroyed. And that's a lot to bear. But also maybe it was like they kind of styled her looking a little bit like Doc in Back to the Future.
Oh, completely.
And then they reference Back to the Future.
I remember when I was a little kid. Oh, sorry. You keep going.
Oh, no, you go ahead. When you were a little kid.
I was going to say, when I was a little kid, I remember I went to the movie theater and the poster for Back to the Future was there. And my mother was like, Edward, Back to the Future. That's a mistake they made on the movie poster. You can only go back to the past. And I was like, wow. Then when I saw the movie as a kid, I was like, obviously they knew. It wasn't like the people who made this movie didn't realize you can't go back to the future. That's like the whole point.
So that's the first time you realized that your mother could be wrong.
It was, if you've ever read the book Portnoy's Complaint, it was like the part where his dad puts on a baseball glove backwards, and as the dad's doing it, he's like, don't do it, Dad. Oh my God, don't do it, you idiot. And then he puts it on backwards and he's like, realizes his dad is just a person.
Yeah.
That was at my moment.
Are you crying? Is this like Mark Maron right now?
Is there anything you did not like about the movie?
I should have been in it.
That's a great one. Do you believe that Jake Gyllenhaal is one of our best actors?
I don't really think about it much. I think I've seen him in Donnie Darko and I've seen him in Brokeback Mountain. And it's pretty much the same character in both.
Hmm.
I'm just kidding about that last part.
I didn't know. I was just like, yeah, sure. I mean, he does look the same.
Who do you think is our best actor in his age range? In
In Jake Gyllenhaal's age range, or in?
Yeah.
Let me think about this. Tom Hanks.
You're joking, right? He's way older. Can we please get a remake of Brokeback Mountain starring Tom Hanks?
Oh man, Tom Hanks and Robin Williams would have killed it in that. It's such a tragic.
Tom Hanks and Robin Williams, huh?
You had said that Andrew, he does look like Donnie Darko. Has that been something that a lot of people have pointed out in life?
Yeah.
All right, not quite the fertile topic I thought it could be.
Especially when he had short hair, people were always coming up and being like, "You look like Donnie Darko." And then he grew his hair long so that people wouldn't say that anymore. Because it was unnecessary.
That is why his hair is long?
Yeah.
That is a great origin story for having long hair.
Yeah.
I mean, so this was really an issue.
Yeah.
I mean, he does look like Donnie Darko. I can imagine him doing that kind of like that face he makes when he first sees the rabbit. Like I can imagine him doing a good impression of that.
Yeah. He can make some scary faces. Yeah, I wonder if there's a market for that.
I once was at the Stanley Film Fest at the hotel where Stephen King came up with The Shining. Mm-hmm. And there was a Jack Nicholson impersonator there, dressed as Jack Nicholson from The Shining. And I swear to God, when I first saw him, I thought it was Jack Nicholson. And I was like, why would Jack Nicholson like be here dressed up as one of his old characters? And I was like, I guess he's like so lonely or something. Like maybe he's senile and this is what he's doing. Like, because the guy was kind of just like wandering the grounds. And then when I realized it was an impersonator, I was like, how could I have thought Jack Nicholson was here?
So is it about a mentally ill person or is it about time travel?
I would say it's about time travel.
So it's about time travel.
Yeah, he's definitely mentally ill, right?
Well,
or is it all because he's kind of fucked up from the time travel?
Yeah, he's a prophet. If it's about time travel and he is the one understanding it, I mean, it would make somebody go crazy to understand something that the rest of humanity doesn't, which is what I was saying about Roberta Sparrow. But
that's like me in the show Stranger Things.
What do you mean about Stranger Things?
No, I just mean I'm like a Cassandra figure from like the very first second. I was like, this is not good. This is not good. And like, I bet by season 3, everyone's going to be like, oh, this show's horrible.
I've never seen it.
Well, it's not really worth it. That's time you could be spending watching The Americans, which is the best show.
So the psychiatrist character,
mm-hmm.
She's interesting to me because she's like, stern, scientific. Then she does hypnotism, but then she starts talking about God a bunch in like the final quarter of the movie. And that confused me. Something it like switched from like not just believing in time travel, but Donnie needed to believe in time travel and believe in God and believe in some sort of like fate or like a will, like God's will or something.
Yeah. What was her role really?
Wait, do you mean as a device? I mean, so that we could learn more about Donnie through his appointments. But then her role in his life, yeah, I guess that it got overturned. It was like 1 minute she's his doctor, but then by the end, she's this kind of spiritual guide. She's like, your pills are placebos. You don't need to take them. Kind of like this whole like, do what you got to do, man. And then she's like, you're not an atheist. You're agnostic. And I don't know. It turned a little Jesus-y on me at the end. Like it turned from just like messing with time and events to him being this kind of chosen figure. And and then in the real world, after the tangent universe explodes, in the real world, I'm upset about the Patrick Swayze character not getting his house burned down and not getting the porn dungeon found. It shows him still living and just like kind of like sobbing and being a great character. I love Patrick Swayze in this movie.
Oh yeah.
But I don't know. It's like, oh, he doesn't get his. Donnie has to die a virgin. And Patrick Swayze continues to live.
That's the fucked up thing about life.
Always. It's always that way.
I feel like I'm dying. I feel like I'm dying.
I feel like you're dying.
I'm so low.
Wait, we're not on the phone right now. This is your podcast. What is going on?
No, I know. I will edit out all this, but
I feel like I'm dying. I'm so low.
No, I think first of all it's hot in here because I have had the AC off too long and I'm wearing a winter hat. That's probably my first problem.
It's definitely the cherry on top of your problems. You and your winter hat in August, dying of heat.
He has emotional problems.
Do you have anything else you want to say about Donnie Darko?
The actress who played the mother.
Oh yeah, Mary McConnell. I said her name before, but now I can't remember. Yes.
She looks like Kim Deal.
Oh yeah.
I really liked her.
Yeah.
I like that moment at the end when the Gretchen character waves at the mother. The mother waves back at her, and then the little boy standing next to her waves at the mom.
That is so great. That's just like such a funny end beat.
Yeah.
I wish we could end this podcast in such a way.
How would that go?
I don't know, because it's like a visual joke. That's the problem.
I'd wave at you. You'd wave back at me. We zoom out and realize that my whole band has been sitting in this room with me the whole time, and they wave at you.
That would be amazing.